Good morning. Are we ready, Elaine, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that we're now live streaming.
Thank you for that. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Licensing Committee, the subcommittee this morning. There's no planned fire drill for today, so if the fire alarm does sound, members of staff will guide you safely out of the building. Can I please remind members and others to speak clearly into their microphones in order that this can be picked up live stream. Finally, when the meeting is finished, can I please ask the members of the committee to place their committee papers in the local bins, which can be found near the doors as you leave the chambers. You could also please dispose of any papers, cups, water bottles, general rubbish in the waste bins provided. The substitute for this meeting this morning is Councillor David Andrews. Thank you. First item on the agenda is to select the chairman, please. Thank you. Thank you. Disclosure of interest, if any, please.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. Personal licensee holder, and just to let you know that Michael Kang is from Mablethorpe, so I know Michael Kang. Not personally, but I know Michael Kang.
Thank you.
Yeah, but we never see you yet.
Apologies, if any, please. There are none there.
Apologies received from Councillor Benjamin.
Thank you.
And we have Councillor Cullen substituting today. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is an application for the variation of a premises licence for the Turks Head Louth. I could ask Mr. Tweedy, please, the Principal Licence Officer, to run through the report first, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just run through the report for everybody's benefit. I won't labour and go through it page by page, but I'll just go through the salient points. Just so everybody's aware, Chairman mentioned that Councillor Andrews is the substitute member today. The subcommittee consists of 3 licensing councillors. Of course, there may be a scenario where a councillor may need to declare an interest and step aside. So what we do here at East Lindsey, we always have a substitute member just in case that scenario arises. Today it's Councillor Andrews. Councillor Andrews is going to sit here and observe now because that scenario I described hasn't happened. He will not be involved in any discussions or any deliberations or any decision making, but he will observe the processes today. So this is an application for variation of a premises licence for the Turks Head on Oswald Street in Louth. And the application for variation obviously has been made by the premises licence holder, which is the Turks Head Louth Limited. And there's various aspects to the application. The first is to increase the internal licensed area of the premises, and that's by adding a function room or restaurant to the first floor of the venue. And then secondly, to extend the licensed area with the construction of a roof terrace to the first floor of the venue. And in relation to that new roof terrace, the applicants volunteered a terminal hour of 11 o'clock at night. Also, when I scrutinised the plan, the area at the front of the premises, that appears to, on the variation plan, to have increased. And I'm hoping you can just, when you make your submissions to us, just explain why that is also. So, of course, the application was advertised at the premises, advertised in the local newspaper on the council's website, and that received representations, one from the Environmental Health Team Chair, and Caroline Curry from the Environmental Health Team will go through that submission for you as we go along. And then there's been 3 representations from what are known under the Licensing Act as other persons, that in this case, it's people that reside in the vicinity of the actual premises. And Mr. Kang from the Kernia Licensing Consultants is going to speak on behalf of those people in due course. So the fact that representations were made is why the licence application is being considered by the committee today. And the committee can, there's a number of, a limited number of decisions the committee can make today. They can grant the variation of the application as it is. They can modify the variation in some shape or form and still grant it, or they could reject the whole of the variation application and in effect refuse it, or they could reject parts of it and grant other parts. What I wanted to make clear today, though, that this is not a review of the premises licence for the Turks Head. This is an application for the variation of the licence. So the decisions that the committee can make today relate to the variation application. It's not a review, a look at the licence. The committee have no power to amend the current licence. It's the variation application today that's being considered. I think possibly, Chair, it's probably best if I just hand across to the applicant for the applicant to actually go through the application, set out what's proposed and make any submissions they feel are appropriate to yourself, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
So I'm going to switch my green light off. Hopefully, if you switch your button, the green light will come on and then that will mean that the microphone.
Success.
Thank you. But remember, once you finish speaking, to switch the green light off.
Yeah. Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. I appear before on behalf of the applicant today. My name is Hilden. Alongside me is, first of all, a representative of the owner of the owning company of the property, which is the Louth Turks Head Limited, and that is Mr. Hollis. Alongside me, the other side is the DPS, Joanna Faulkner, and then Kai Appleyard, who is the premise manager. So we brought the full team today, so hopefully if any questions need answering, we can address them at the appropriate time. So in terms of the application before you today, the applications for variation of the premise licence at the Turks Head on Aswell Street. Chair, you'll have received a copy of your own agenda document, and what I intend to do is to refer you to a couple of pages of that first of all. So if I refer you to first of all to page 1, I'll talk through it. All I'm going to highlight is the parts of the application. The application is twofold. Firstly, the increase in the internal licensed area of the premise by adding a function room / restaurant area to the first floor of the premise. And secondly, to extend the external licensed area with the construction of a roof terrace to the first floor. And in relation to the roof terrace, it currently states that the applicant has volunteered a terminal hour of 2300, and I'll come back to that in due course. Turning to page 3 of the agenda, is what's already been raised by your principal licensing officer, Mr. Twiddy, in relation to the plan that was submitted with the variation application. Unfortunately, I wasn't involved in the submission of the application, and the application that's been submitted has been submitted with a plan that contains redlining around some of the external area, which isn't currently licensed. What I have done is at page 14 of the documentation which I submitted yesterday, that's the applicant's bundle, and that contains a revised plan, and it differs to the one that was in your main agenda. It just ties in with the current license plan for the premise. Just so it's very, very clear, my client has got no is not seeking to amend the external licensed area. That will remain exactly as is, and no application is being made to vary that. So the application is on the 2 issues which I've already raised. So the increase in the licensed area for the function room and the extended licensed area. If I can move on to page 14 of the. So I already addressed that. So the applicant is the Turks Head Louth Limited. By way of background for the Turks Head, Mr. Hollis, who's alongside me, has been involved in the Turks Head HAL for a number of years. He originally bought the lease back in July 2007. In early 2008, he went into partnership with a gentleman called Neil Crossland, and they formed the Links Pub Company. And the property ran on that basis for a number of years before, in around August 2013, following what I can only describe as a bit of an acrimonious split, Mr. Howell bought out the company outright and took on the property on his own. So since 2013, the property has been run by Mr. Howell and his licensing team at the venue. DPS is very experienced. Joanna Faulkner has been at the premise for over 5 years now in the role of DPS. And the manager, Kai Appleyard, has also been in situ for a very, very long period of time. And in a way, it's as if the property has two DPSs. They're both that experienced, very good, and dovetail with one another with the day-to-day operation and running of the premise. As well as being the owner of the property, Mr. Howell is also the DJ at the venue and has been DJing there again since nearly 20 years now, and therefore is in control of the sound system, noise, etc. at the property, and in particular in relation to Friday and Saturday evenings. So, Chair, the team that are in place at the premise are a very experienced team. In terms of spends on the venue, around £300,000 was spent in the last year, and since my client has been in occupation, well over £500,000. And if I can refer the committee to the agenda, and in particular pages 8 through until 13, you will see that the photographs showing the venue, and that's the applicant's bundle for anybody. And so page 8 shows photographs of the outside of the Turks head, and then it moves through into the bar area at the front, following through page 10, the same. Page 11, the bar area at the rear of the property. And then the committee can see page 12 and 13, the notices which ask patrons to leave the premise quietly, which are in situ and a requirement of the licence. The licence itself has been in its current form since around January of this year. A variation application was submitted in December 2021. And at that time, the hours for the property were extended. If I can refer the committee to page 1 of the applicant's bundle, and this contains the current operating hours and licensable activities for the premise. These are the hours, etc., that were granted back in January time of this year. And so what it confirms is what the licensable activities are. And you can see a whole list of them, ranging from films to live music to supply of alcohol, late night refreshment. The times of the licensable activities, which are currently authorised, are then contained underneath. And you can see the hours for the regulated entertainment being Monday to Sunday, 9 till 04, and then the seasonal variations. And then as it progresses, you'll see the hours for the supply of alcohol, which is till 3:30 daily, and late night refreshment to 0400 daily, with the opening hours at the top of page 2 being 0400 hours. My clients are not seeking to change those hours in any way. I must stress that to the committee. This is not an application to vary by way of extension of hours in throughout the night, etc. This application will stay, the licence will stay as currently is in terms of all activities and all hours. Then at the bottom of page 2, you have Annexure One, which is the mandatory conditions. The conditions are all the conditions which are already in situ on the licence. So the mandatory conditions are those which are located on pretty much every licensed premise in the country. Anyone that's selling alcohol has to comply with the mandatory conditions. And there's a whole raft of them, whether they're in relation to irresponsible drink promotions or potable water being available, etc. They are there and they are complied with. At Annex 2 on page 5 of the documentation which we've submitted, there are then conditions consistent with the operating schedule. And all of the conditions that follow are those which were inserted by my client, whether at conversion back in 2005 when the Licensing Act 2003 came into effect, or through subsequent hearings where applications to vary to extend hours have been granted. And so these conditions have either been offered by my client or have already been put on. But all of those, again, must be adhered to. And what I'll quickly do is just quickly fly through some of those, because I think it's important that the committee are aware how the premise run. So the first one, under the prevention of crime and disorders, there are a minimum of 2 SIA registered door supervisors from 10 p.m. until 30 minutes after closure. And that is adhered to. In fact, my clients have more than the 2 required on Friday and Saturday evenings, with up to 4 door supervisors on. The condition is they have to have 2. They have double that on at peak periods. So that is just a minimum requirement, but my client goes above and beyond. The door supervisors are positioned in prominent locations whereby they control exit entry to and from the premise. And again, that's adhered to. The property has a register logbook. They have a drugs policy. Over the page, a tamper-resistant CCTV system. And I actually placed in our brochure at pages 23 to 26 details of the CCTV system used. The reason why that is in there is that a CCTV system is usually required by police to be in recording for up to 30 days, a minimum of 30 days. In this instance, my client's CCTV is pretty much a state-of-the-art system. It records for up to 80 days and records both internally and externally at the property. And the police actually use it as a source of information for themselves when incidents occur in Louth, because of the times it's picking up well above and beyond what really it should be recording. And then finally, the conditions regarding, we've got no readmittance after 03:30 hours, incident refusals, but which is in place at the property. The premise operates with a challenge 25, and you all know what the challenge 25 is. I won't dwell on that. And then in terms of prevention of public nuisance, the premise licence holder shall not permit the use of the licensed premise to become a nuisance to persons in the neighbourhood, and in particular shall take all necessary precautions to prevent persons in the neighbourhood being disturbed by noise. I've already mentioned Mr. Howell is the DJ at the property. He keeps a close monitor on noise. And the very final page, or not the very final, page 48 of the brochure, which we have submitted, shows the part of the DJ booth, and on that you'll see a device next to a laptop screen. That is the noise monitoring device, which reads decibels, and that is kept at levels which we would deem are not causing a statutory nuisance, that is not caused issues in the past. And therefore we would submit that the noise issue, alleged noise issues are alleged, and this is not a problem at the property. There's also the signage asking patrons to leave quietly. I've already addressed that. We're showing the photographs of the same. So with regard to the 2 parts of the application, first of all, the function room. Additional photos have been produced at pages 18 through to 21 of the bundle of documents. That shows the first floor area. You can see the quality of the fit out of the area in question. Like I say, it will be used for functions, etc. In terms of objections to the application, I've gone through all of the representations and cannot really deduce anything which objects to that part of the application. and therefore I'm going to move on past it. It's for the same hours as is already in situ in the property, for the same activities already in situ in the property, and therefore the premise will not be operating in any different way to what they currently are now. If this does become an issue, then I'll come back and deal with it as and when. But from reviewing all of the reps, I don't think it's an issue that's been picked up. So I'm going to move on and concentrate on the external area. And in relation to the external area, as the committee are aware, an application has been moved to basically refurbish the outside area on the first floor of the property. And the best photo I can show you for how that currently is page 22 of the bundle. You can see it's an enclosed area with surrounded by first floor buildings. I know that the objectors the objectors consultant, should I say, has submitted additional photos yesterday to the committee, which show from above, and I'm sure he'll refer you at some point to that. But again, those photos clearly show that the area in question is surrounded by structures. The application that was submitted to the committee for the external area applied for a closing time of the area of 2300 hours, which is in line with planning legislation. Planning deems up 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. to be daytime hours, and that was what was submitted. However, my client is aware of the concerns raised by the Environmental Health Officer to the application. And in order to promote the partnership working and the Section 182 guidance, my client is more than happy to have the external area on the roof terrace a restriction to 2200 hours. So a reduction from 2300 hours to 2200 hours for the area in question. I have spoken to the Environmental Health Officer about that this morning. That's when I just grabbed her for a quick word before the application. Unfortunately, as stated, I wasn't involved in the prep of the application beforehand. But in terms of the position now, it will be limited to 2200 hours. And further, on top of that, albeit the EHO requested the 2200 hours if the committee were minded to grant, my clients want to go one step further and are happy to confirm that no regulated entertainment will take place on that area either. So there won't be live music, etc., DJs playing, nothing of that nature. So again, I hope the committee can see that we're going above and beyond. We're taking into account the concerns raised, and the application in terms of the external area on the roof terrace has been reduced in its nature, and hopefully that will appease any issues that the Environmental Health Officer has with regard to the noise emanation from that area of the property. At this point, I will address the Environmental Health Officer's representation, and I know that she will be addressing you in due course, but just to run through that. So the representation is in the council's main agenda bundle. If I just pause just while members of the committee get to that point. Is there a page of the agenda bundle, Adrian? 25 of the council agenda. Thank you. And in terms of the representation, it refers to the application made by the Turks Head to extend the external area in which licensable activities take place with the addition of a roof terrace to the first floor. So again, it's the objection is based on the roof area at the top of the premise, which has been and a volunteer closure time for the terrace has been volunteered for 2300. As stated, we've now addressed that and reduced to 22. So far this year, 6 different residents have made complaints from approximately 20 metres to 110 metres from the Turks Head. What I would say to the committee is that a licensing application to vary has now been made, and there are only 3 objections from local residents. So I don't know, the committee's had, EHO has had 6 complaints previously. We do not know the contents of those. We don't know who applied, from where they lived. We don't know what it was in relation to. All we know is that 6 different residents made complaints. Where the EHO did speak to the DPS, Joanna Faulkner, who sat alongside me, Joanna made it very clear that she did not feel the noise emanation was from the Turks Head. There are a number of other licensed premises in the surrounding area. There was one, the Wick, which has recently closed, which was renowned for playing loud music into the early hours. And then secondly, my clients would also submit that a property called Oliver's further down Oswald Street also has its doors open and plays extremely loud music. And therefore, it's Miss Faulkner's submission to the HO that the noise that people have been receiving by way of complaints is coming from other establishments, whether it be the Wick or from Oliver's. What we don't have are noise readings from properties, from the Turks Head, from residents' properties by way of noise decibel readers, confirming that any noise issues are attributable to my client. With regard to the external area, it submits that there's no sound attenuation. Sound will travel without barrier effect. As stated, it will be surrounded by first floor structures. And if noise from this area is not managed, is likely to affect both neighbours in close proximity of the venue, as well as those at much greater distance. But as stated, the hours are now being curtailed till 10, and regulated entertainment is not going to be taking place in that area. People will be outside talking, etc. There may be background music, but there will not be recorded DJs, etc. taking place outside. With regard to the HO, it states, given the lack of attenuation, the height of the proposal, plus a diary written and signed as a legal witness statement, the details of the source, I'm concerned that the proposal will cause a public nuisance due to the noise in the area. What I would submit to the committee is that my client has never received a caution or warning from Environmental Health in relation to noise at the property. There's never been a review application submitted by Environmental Health, whether a standard review or a summary review in relation to noise at the property. We have never even been asked to submit a minor variation to add conditions to the licence if there are issues at the request of the Environmental Health Officer. However, it is appreciated that the Environmental Health Officer has a difficult job. They are there as a responsible authority to deal with noise, to assist committees, and it is noted that they have put the representation in today, and we do take that into consideration. Over the page, it states that any music more than quiet background music is likely to cause a loss of amenity to the local area. So that's any music more than quiet background music. And what we're submitting is that the area will only operate with background music. If the intended use of the area is to provide regulated entertainment, such as live or recorded music, I'm of the opinion that the premise are likely to cause a public nuisance. So likely to be nuisance if there's regulated entertainment. However, there won't be regulated entertainment. That has now been removed as part of the application. And then finally, regarding the timings, 2300 is technically considered to be the daytime. If the committee are minded to allow the application, I would ask that consideration is given to reducing the proposed time period to 2200 hours. And again, that is what we are willing to do, and have submitted to the committee that will be offered as part of the application today. Then moving on, there are a number of residential representations. Before going into each of those representations, if I can just flag up the committee page 27 and page 28 of the agenda bundle submitted by the applicant.
to everybody to it's those 2 pages there.
Thank you.
Oh, right, yeah,
That one.
lovely. Yeah. Yes, got it.
Page 27 is a letter received from Environmental Health on the 7th of July. We didn't think it would be appropriate to come before the committee without making the committee aware of this letter. The letter was received in relation to a complaint alleging that noise from your licensed premises causing a nuisance to nearby residents. It then goes on to state, please be aware that the above allegations are only being brought to your attention, and I'm not implying that a problem exists at this time. So very clear, this is just being brought to our attention because of a noise complaint. The environmental health officer hadn't been down and carrying out noise readings, etc. at the property. If further complaints are received, noise monitoring is likely to be carried out with a view to determining whether a noise problem exists. And as far as the applicant is concerned, no noise monitoring has taken place, or if so, we've not been made aware of it, and no results have been provided to us. And so, as far as we are aware in our position is that there is no issue regarding from noise monitoring at the property. I would go further to submit that since the complaints have been received, my clients are going out, carrying out noise readings with their own decibel meter in the surrounding area. And again, I would submit that noise is emanating from premise, but not from my client's licensed premise. From the Wick, from Oliver's Bar is where the noise is being picked up from. And then moving on to page 28 of the brochure, Turks Head noise. This was distributed round a multiple number of residential properties following the application. We don't know who prepared the documentation. We don't know, excuse me, we don't know who prepared it, but we know that it was put through letterboxes of a whole host of residential dwellings in the surrounding area. Following on from that, 3 objections were received to this application. That's following Turks Head noise, sick of the noise from the Turks Head till 4 a.m. at weekends. I mean, it's not even in relation to the application. It's factually incorrect, but this is what went round. And therefore, you would assume that somebody who's objecting must have put this around, or because it doesn't make sense that it was somebody else and then they wouldn't object to the application. However, only 3 people object, 3 residents object to that, and that has gone round the whole area. The application also advertised in the local press, advertised on notices around the property. So the residents of Louth are aware of this, Facebook, etc., and what other form of modern media that I've got no idea on. But people use it and are aware of it. And so this application was very firmly in the public domain. And again, I submit there are only 3 objections to it. So moving on to those objections, I know I won't be addressing noise logs at this point. First of all, if I can deal with the representation received at page 29 of the council bundle, and that's from Miss Lockie Evans. So the first paragraph, I wish to lodge an objection to the above application based on the public nuisance objective. I understand the application seeks to extend area for the current licensable activities, and this is to include a new roof terrace and bar to the first floor. I understand the Turks Head are already loosely licensed until 4 a.m. I don't know what loosely licensed mean. The property is licensed till 4. It's been licensed by this licensing authority. And in terms of the a new roof terrace and bar to the first floor, there's no external bar on the roof terrace area. Moving on to the second paragraph, my household are already disturbed by the noise of current activities and have raised this with Louth Council Environmental Department. My family property backs on approximately 250 feet away in a residential area. The Turks Head is in the next street along, heading into the town centre. I'm aware of other residents with families close by also being kept approximately 8:30 to 4 a.m. At this point, all I can say is other residents, other families haven't objected. It's supposition. There's no evidence that other residences and family are objecting, apart from the two members of the public who are before the committee today, and Miss Lockie Evans, who hasn't attended before you today but is being represented. The rooftop bar and possible extra volume of customers would increase the noise already experienced. Again, it's not a rooftop bar, it's a rooftop area, and we've already dealt with the licensable activities or lack of them, which will be taking place in the said area. Then finally, the final paragraph, there is also a concern for public safety. Great volumes of customers from the Turks Head hang around outside drinking and obstruct the road. I've seen several occurrences of people drunk, also with legs in the road, and passed out on the pavement in the early hours. I believe this fits for an objection under public safety. And at this point, I would submit to the committee that the key enforcer for licensing, and I'll come on to this in closing, is the police. The police under Section 182 of the Licensing Act, and they are not objecting today. And then following on from that, there is also a separate public safety department at the council, and again, they have not raised an objection to this application. So I would submit that the key enforcers for public safety, the police and public safety, have not even submitted a representation. They've not even put in a token email or a letter or a phone call to say, oh, we've got a problem with this. Can you look to deal with it? And therefore, I would ask for the committee to attach the appropriate weight to that representation. The second representation at page 30 is from Lindsay Clark, and Lindsay Clark is in attendance before the committee this morning. With regard to Miss Clark's representation, it goes on to state that she wishes to lodge an objection to the application based on the public nuisance and the public safety licensing objectives. I understand that the application seeks to extend the licensed area in which licensable activities can take place, with the addition of a proposed roof terrace to the first floor. I further understand that the premises are already licensed till 4 a.m. Yeah, and if the extended areas are permitted, especially the roof terrace, then my sleep may be impacted with the increased noise. And that reads to me as if the resident appears to think that the roof terrace will be open until 4 a.m. I could be wrong, but it's not, and that's that. Then she goes on to also say, I already hear the music every weekend till 3 a.m. and experience problems from their customers drinking on the pavement, and it never seems to be policed. Well, the police are not here and not objecting. So again, I'm back to that point. Should this application be granted, then the noise from the roof terrace will disrupt not only myself, but the many residents in the vicinity of the premise. The many residents, all of those that have put objections into this application, or should I say 3. What I would and do need to draw to the committee's attention is that Miss Clark is currently barred from the Turks Head. She was barred on the 13th of April 2022, and it's in the incident log at the property, and she was ejected by police on that occasion. So she's barred from the property, and I would submit to this committee that the objection is one of a vexatious nature, and one which is hostile to the applicant because they're not allowed to drink in the property at the current time. Moving on to the next objector, we have Darren Melton. Darren Melton's also joined us today at the subcommittee meeting, and he goes on to state that he's been informed that the Turks Head are making an application to vary a premise licence. They want to extend the existing internal area to add a function room to the first floor in which activities can take place. I live in a flat adjacent to the property and have already complained to the proprietor about the noise, which continues to about 0300 hours in the morning. My flat is double glazed, does nothing to subdue the sound. Paraphrasing, I have problems sleeping. Often broken glass and vomit is in the area after a weekend, and I'm surprised nothing has been done before now. There are 12 flats in my area, all suffering with the same noise pollution. Again, 3 people have objected. Where are the other 9 from the flats, or 10, should I say? All suffering with the same noise pollution, and nothing has changed since my complaint about 3 months ago. I fear should the permission be granted to adjust the variation to the premise licence, then the noise will worsen, as the amenities will be ever closer to me and in the open. A roof terrace, I work shifts and cannot sleep when I am on at 600 because of the noise during the night. Please do not grant a variation and stop the noise pollution in the early hours of the morning at weekends. So with regards to Mr. Melton, you'll be glad to hear he's not barred from the property. He does drink at the venue and use the venue. What I would say about Mr. Melton is that when the application was first submitted by the Turks Lav, he approached the DPS, Miss Faulkner, who sits alongside me, and was discussing the application and stated that he wanted to support the application and that he wanted a letter to be placed before the committee. And he actually went as far as asking Miss Faulkner to draft that letter on his behalf and submit it, of which Miss Faulkner, being the decent, respectable DPS and conscious of any implications, refused to do so because she didn't think it appropriate. If somebody was going to write a letter to a committee as a resident, it should be done off their own back and to the committee, not for the DPS to write it. So it seems very strange that we then receive a letter from Mr. Melton then objecting to the application. Very strange. One thing that does need to be brought before the committee is that we've already made reference to noise from another property, which is down the road, and that property being Oliver's Bar. And Oliver's Bar is, as I mentioned earlier, operated by Neil Crossland, and Neil Crossland was the business partner who my client was in business with in the in circa 2010 to 2013. That was an acrimonious split, and there is tension. That's all I will say at the present time. What I would submit to the committee is that the proprietor of the flats for both Miss Clark and Miss Melton is, believe it or not, Mr. Crossland. He owns a freehold on each of their properties and is the landlord. And that is all I'm going to say on those two representations. So moving on, and I'm very close to finishing now. I do apologise that I've taken up so much time, committee. I just feel points have to be made and brought to your attention. And so just to finish, the application before you is not seeking to change hours. It's not seeking to change activities, etc. Already mentioned that there's not the police, there's not all responsible authorities apart from the HO, and hopefully the concerns of the HO have now been addressed. This is not a review application, as your licensing officer rightly pointed out at the very beginning of the hearing. This application is to be judged on its own merits, and we are looking at the areas in question, i.e. the roof terrace area and the first floor of the premise. And hopefully those points have been addressed. So unless you have any further queries, Chair, members of the committee, that is the application.
Now, I have asked council, have you any questions you would like to ask? No?
I've got a question, if that's okay.
Yes, Mr. Tuddy.
If it's okay with everybody, the chair's going to allow me just to ask a question. Okay, well, it's a two-part question, actually. So you mentioned the noise limiter, and you did a photograph of the noise limiter within your evidence pack. Going through the licence conditions that are attached to this premises licence, there is no requirement for a noise limiter. That's something you volunteered. Okay, I presume it was.
No, that is the decibel reader. That monitors noise, so it's taken up.
Ah, right. Okay. Sorry. You carry on.
So that's taken away from the property and can read noise. So one could go 20 metres down the road and you can measure the noise emanation from that. It's not a limiting device on sound at the property. That's not currently on the property, and there's never been any requirement for an actual limiting device.
That's fine, because that clarified, because I was confused. I thought it was a noise limiter, so that's fine. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you. That's it, Chair.
Thank you.
I want to ask
Have you any questions, Caroline?
No questions. I think
Okay, thank you. Mr. King, have you got any queries, please?
Yeah, just a couple. In regards to the noise meter, what level of decibels do you consider to be acceptable as a reading at a property, and what distance from the Turks Head are you taking those readings?
I would submit that environmental health deals with that in terms of they would go to people's houses and do the readings. My clients do go out and monitor. They listen. They know what music's being played from their property, and they're in contact by phone at the time to ensure that they know what music is being played, etc. And they clearly would submit that it is not coming from their property.
I'm afraid you didn't answer my question though. If you're going out with a noise meter to measure noise, you're measuring a decibel reading at a distance from the property. To consider that decibel reading, the noise level not to be a noise nuisance, what level do you consider that decibel reading to be?
Well,
Mr. Howell will deal with that.
yeah, well, I monitor the noise within the venue when I'm DJing. I have done for years. I always have a noise monitor, and you know, I'd keep that, obviously a low level. But since we've had these, obviously this hearing and the complaints, we've regularly walked around Louth. We walk around the properties of the complainants, and we cannot get a reading from the Turks Head music whatsoever. The noise is coming from other venues. It's not from us whatsoever.
I'm afraid that still doesn't answer my question, but I'll probably move on. I would suggest that if you have a noise meter, that you're going to look at the level of decibels that are being produced. You would measure those, you record them in a diary. We have no evidence that that noise meter is being used. It's very easy to buy a noise meter and stick it on a photograph, but without any evidence that a reading's been taken from a certain point and the decibel reading, I don't think that you can give much weight to the fact that they're taking readings.
And that is correct. They can be bought and quite easily. And I would submit that if there's residents who as alleging noise from the property, they could quite easily get one and do the noise readings and liaise with the HO in relation to that.
And just a further question on the upstairs functions room, the photographs don't show a bar up there. If you've got a function up there, how are people going to get alcohol or drinks?
From the downstairs bar.
I have no further questions at this time. Thank you.
Yeah. Is that all? Is that anything further, Mr. King? That's fine, thank you. Just to clarify, actually, possibly as well for my councillors, when Mr. King asked for your readings on a decibel, if you'd been taking readings, you should have had numbers, and what we're looking for was our numbers, but you don't have any numbers.
Sorry, Chair.
you know, obviously we do it for our own benefit, and obviously the last thing we want to do is create a nuisance to anybody. But we've not, you know, we don't record them.
Well, we've got,
No.
we have, Joanna's got them on her phone. She's just told me.
Right.
Oh,
You know, I've
so-
never personally done that because, you know, as I say, I've obviously checked that it's not
Just
coming from our premises.
However, again, we would submit that. So where would that be?
That's outside Melanie's here.
So I've got a photograph if the committee requires to see it, showing it outside Melanie Lockie's property.
no, that's fine. Mr. Twitty, like a word, please.
Yeah, we're there. So just remember, on the day, you can't submit any documentary evidence to the committee without the consent of all parties. But I think the crux of Mr. Keng's question, as far as I understand it, was what level would you look at and think that's too loud? And I think at the moment you haven't given the committee a level that you would see as a reading that you would feel that's too loud, we need to do something about that. So I think I'm not going to labour the point, but I think probably just one more chance for you to say, have you got a level that you would look at and say that's too loud?
Chair, in terms of the levels, as stated, client has been out and has gone out with their device. They are no noise sound experts. Now that I'll put that on the record in terms of in the same as the HO would carry out these records. However, they have been out. Now they may not have copious pages of records. They've only been looking at this since these representations came in the last week or so. So they're going out and they are standing near the property. Now, the readings are most probably going to be zero because what they're saying is that noise isn't even heard from their properties. What I have seen shows low. It's they've not got a detailed register of those noise measurements. However, there aren't noise measurements put forward by anybody else.
We're not asking that. What we're just saying was that we were only asking what you thought was a reasonable level of noise coming from any establishment, whether it's yours or somebody else's. What would you recommend was the reasonable noise level? We don't seem to be able to get to there, so I'll forget about that and we'll move on now, please. If nobody else has got any questions. Oh, yes, Mr. Twitty.
If you turn to page 18 of the council report pack, so that's the pack that I got together for the committee. And so at the bottom of page 18, I think this is what you're saying that you're complying with. So there's the premises, the license condition is the premises license holder shall not permit the use of the licensed premises to become a nuisance to persons in the neighbourhood, and in particular shall take all necessary precautions to prevent persons in the neighbourhood being disturbed by noise. So what you're saying is that you feel your noise patrols that you're doing is your way of complying with that condition. Okay. And then the condition goes on to say the premises licence holder shall comply with any noise standards specified by the licensing authority. And in effect, that would be environmental health through the licensing team. And what you're saying is you haven't got a reading to look for because nothing's been specified to you. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is it to the crux. I apologise, Chair, if I've not conveyed that.
That's fine.
So eloquently put by your licensing officer.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Caroline, would you like to go next, please?
Certainly. So part of my role within East Lindsey District Council as a Senior Environmental Health Officer is to investigate noise disturbance. I have a postgraduate diploma in acoustics and noise control, and I'm a member of the Institute of Acoustics, and I've worked in noise for over 20 years. Environmental Health wish to raise a representation to this proposed variation based on the prevention of public nuisance due to noise that is likely to impact on those who live in, work and visit the area. Our concern relates to the proposed roof terrace to the first floor, and my representation will focus on this area. I note the inclusion in the application for the restaurant or function room. However, any noise from this area should be able to be controlled using standard acoustic measures, such as keeping the windows closed, directional speakers, and perhaps a sound limiter. In terms of background information, between the 31st of May and the 11th of July this year, the Environmental Protection Team received complaints regarding noise from this premises from 6 different individuals that live approximately between 20 metres and 110 metres from the Turks Head. In relation to the complaints, my officer spoke to Joanna Faulkner, the DPS for the Turks Head, who advised that in her opinion that the noise was from other premises and possibly vexatious complaints due to a dispute. We are aware of instances where nearby premises have been creating the dominant noise source as opposed to the Turks Head. However, we are also in receipt of a noise diary signed as a legal witness statement from a local resident that has been made available to this committee. This diary details that in order to ensure and confirm where the noise is coming from, one of the local residents has visited the area on 5 occasions in the early hours of the morning. And on each occasion that they visited the area, they were able to confirm that noise was emanating from Turks Head as opposed to other premises. I don't know if you want to expand on the diary at this stage.
Yeah, okay, I can Chair.
Yes, you're not.
Oh, and you just want to switch off and then. So I think possibly if people want to discuss the noise diary in detail and the entries in that, it might be an idea if the committee are minded to move into private session. But of course, if anybody wants to make any comment on that, it's for the committee to decide whether they wish it to move into private session for the period of time that the noise diary is going to be considered or discussed in depth, and then come back out into the public session once that's been done. So I think I've already discussed it with the chairman prior to the hearing. I think he's quite happy and the rest of the committee are happy to do it that way. It's just whether anybody else has got any comments or wish it to be dealt with in a slightly different manner. No, okay. Yeah, if you're okay, Chair, to move into private session and then we'll come back out.
Yes, if you want to discuss this, then we must move into private session.
I don't particularly need to discuss any detail in it. It's just to be the other parties wish to, this would be an ideal opportunity.
Will you be raising this, Mr. King?
I'm quite happy to go into private session when I'm giving you my presentation.
When you're in private session, yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, Carol, sorry,
Okay.
Carry on, sorry.
We have installed noise monitoring equipment in a property that was approximately 110 metres from the Turks Head, and recordings revealed both music and general people noise. My officer noted that the noise would cause annoyance to the residents. However, we have yet to serve a notice for statutory nuisance, and it might be useful to expand on the difference between statutory nuisance and nuisance as a general term that we're using in this licensing hearing. But we didn't serve notice due to the distance that the monitoring was undertaken. The overall volume was not sufficient in order for us to be satisfied that we were in a position to serve a notice, but noted that should the opportunity present itself to install the noise monitoring equipment in a residential premises closer to the venue, a different view may be formed. We recognise that this is a town centre location and we don't expect silence. However, nor is it considered reasonable for local residents to be exposed to excessive noise where best practices have not been employed to control noise. I advise that even if Environmental Health were to have received no complaints for this premises, we would have still raised a representation to the proposed external first floor area. I'm not in possession of any detailed plans for this roof terrace. However, it is unlikely to offer much sound attenuation. And given that the area is to be at first floor height, the sound will travel largely uninterrupted over a large area. I do note the applicant's submission this morning to remove the regulated entertainment from this area, and I welcome that. And I also welcome the time being reduced to 10 p.m. I'm aware that live and recorded music is not licensable between the hours of 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. for an audience of up to 500 people in such premises. Should the premise continue with their plans for a first floor roof terrace, I would ask that consideration is given to remove this exemption and impose conditions to restrict such activity. I would expect the applicant to work with environmental health to demonstrate how any noise will be controlled and look at taking positive steps to both manage and improve on the current situation, as well as protect the local sound environment from the proposed variation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, have you got any questions? No. Any questions for Carol? No. Mr. No. 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 Okay. So, Mr. King, if I could ask you to present your case, please, on there. Did you want to go into private session immediately, or?
I'll probably ask when I get to that point, if we could, please. So, good morning, Chair, Committee. So, as we know, this variation now is for two parts of the building, or two areas of the building. It doesn't relate to the outside area on Oswald Street. That is currently licensed, but I don't think it is covered by a pavement license. I represent all three of the residents today. Lindsay Harris on my left, Darren Melton on my right, and Melanie Lockie Evans, who unfortunately can't be with us today. And she sends her apologies for that. On page 11 of your bundle, hopefully you can see three green dots on there. The three green dots do show the locations of the residential premises on three dots on my bit that I'm holding up here. They're not on yours, unfortunately.
This is on your pack, isn't it?
No, I didn't put them on my pack. I just did this last night when I was going through. I was going to photocopy these, but I thought I'll not photocopy them and send them in. So you can see from these three dots on this plan that I'm holding up that the three residential properties, two of them are very close, and there is one that is quite a distance away from the premises, and she has experienced noise problems at her premises there. If the application is granted, and I do note that the applicant did enclose within their bundle an email from me asking whether the applicant would consider 10 o'clock. Nothing was forthcoming from that. And you know, when the hearing was announced, they did say that they'd come to 10 o'clock because they want to work in partnership with the EHO. Well, I don't think forcing a application to a hearing and then agreeing with the EHO at the hearing that is working in partnership. But if the application is granted and is granted for the function room upstairs, inevitably a disco will appear in a functions room. I don't believe that they're going to have functions in that room up until possibly 4 o'clock in the morning without a disco or without live music. You've got the photographs within the applicant's bundle that show what appears to be single glazed windows. They can open, so there will be noise leakage come out of that functions room. The photographs that we've taken and provided, the aerial photographs do also show those windows being there. There's been no proposals within the application to soundproof the functions room. There's been no proposals within the application to install a noise limiter, nothing. They've not even said that they're going to have an acoustic report done for the building. Noise is leaking out of the building at the moment, causing a noise nuisance to residents. 6 have made complaints to the EHO. 2 have not made complaints to the EHO yet, but will be making complaints. So there'll be a total of 8 residents. The number of residents that are going, the number of residents that will be complaining will only grow if this application is granted. Page 18 of your report contains the current conditions that are on the licence. Nearly halfway down, there is a condition which the applicant didn't read to you when he went through all the conditions. He skipped over that one for some reason. I'm not sure why. But that condition reads, patrons shall not be allowed to enter or leave the premises whilst in possession of any drink, unsold containers. For the purpose of clarity, this means any drink, whether or not it contains alcohol, and leaving the premises includes leaving for any reason temporary. Also, for clarity, patrons would still be permitted to have drinks in open vessels whilst in any seated area. And then there is the condition that Mr. Twiddy alluded to at the bottom of page 18 about the noise. And that the premises licence holder would not really create a noise nuisance. And it's quite clear that the premises are creating a noise nuisance. The applicant's representative also said that they've got the whole team here. Well, actually, they've got the 3 directors of the company. These are the 3 people that are the directors of the company. They're all company directors of Turks Head Louth Limited. They are the responsible people. They're in there. And it's very clear that these conditions are being breached at the moment. So the current conditions on the licence are being breached. Could I probably take this opportunity to play that short video, Mr. Twiddy?
What I was going to suggest is that perhaps before you wanted to do that, we have if the chairman's happy, that we have a slight adjournment so we can get that set up to play. So did you want to do that now, or did you want to do that after you've talked about the noise diary in private session? Sorry, I perhaps should have discussed that with you beforehand. It's just the technical way of how we're going to show it on the screen. Sorry.
I'm happy to show that at a later stage then, if it makes it easier. So whichever's the easiest way, yeah, okay. So we're going to play a video later on, which shows the outside of the premises. And that video was taken on the 3rd of July at 2:30 in the morning. And the reason I wanted to show that was going to be twofold. One was going to be because of the application for the increased area outside, which is no longer part of the application. But the second reason for wanting to show that video is that the applicants are not complying with their conditions as they are on the current licence. So if they're not complying with their current conditions on the licence, if we add more conditions for the functions room or more conditions for the terraced area, what guarantees have we got they're going to comply with those conditions if they can't actually comply with the conditions that are on their licence at the moment? Sorry, I've got a bit in here that relates to the outside area on Oswald Street, but that's not longer past the application, so I won't waste anybody's time with that. So if this application is granted for the functions room and or for the terrace area, there will be problems. We will shortly see in the video that noise is being generated through both music and through customers. You can see by our photographs, our aerial photographs and the photographs provided by the applicant, that is an open area. It is surrounded by walls, I'm granted, but noise will bounce off those walls and it'll just bounce off and go everywhere. Both Lindsay and Darren live near enough next door to these premises. They will have their sleep disturbed. Darren works shifts, starts at 6 o'clock in the morning sometimes. Used to enjoy doing shifts on a Sunday morning, starting at 6 and finishing at 6 at night, which he would get paid overtime for. He's no longer able to do that because he can't sleep on a Saturday night up until when the Turks Head closes. We are aware of probably noise coming from other premises, but they don't close at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. They're closing about 1 o'clock in the morning. I think if you do decide to grant the application, then further problems are going to occur. You will get complaints. Your environmental health team will get complaints. People know now how to complain. Lindsay and Darren haven't complained in the past because they were really unsure whether they should or how they should, but they certainly know how they can do now. I'm quite pleased to hear that if the terrace area is granted, that the applicant would seek to have no regulated entertainments on the terrace. But as Caroline confirmed, before 11 o'clock, live and recorded music isn't classed as regulated entertainment. So it makes no odds that they're going to not have it there because live and recorded music isn't regulated entertainment. I think Caroline did also say about that you can put a condition on the license to say that that area would be exempt from deregulation. And I would ask that Kim probably have a look at that. I think you can only apply the deregulation of deregulation, if that's the right terminology, through a review. Yeah, so, and Adrian's confirmed that. So I don't think you could do that in this hearing. It would have to be a review hearing where you could put that condition on. So I think but you could say that there would be no live music, and you could say there'd be no recorded music on the terrace. And I would also say that you should say that there'll be no, and that should be amplified or unamplified, and that there'd be no external speakers on the terrace. I think that you should also probably consider that there should be a number of seats available at any one time if you grant the terrace. And I'm not saying you should grant the terrace. We still say that you should be refusing that terrace, because I think even with chairs and tables, there probably will be a problem. There is a condition for a minimum of 2 door supervisors, and whilst I applaud the fact that more are normally employed, it doesn't mean that there'll be doormen upstairs. And I think if you are minded to grant the functions room, that there should be a minimum number of door supervisors for the function room when being used. And door supervisors normally come in 2s. And also that a door supervisor maybe should be in place on the terrace, probably from about 7 o'clock at night. And it's not uncommon that there's conditions have been placed on premises licenses for door supervisors to be on terraces and balconies and such within the East Lindsey Authority area. I think you should also consider that if you are going to grant the license, that a noise limiter should be installed and should be sealed to the satisfaction of the East Lindsey environmental health officers. And I also think that there should be some form of detailed method of prevention of noise breakout, so an acoustic engineer's report done, and that any work or the work should be carried out in accordance with an acoustic report to the satisfaction of East Lindsey District Council's environmental health officers. And I think only if you can put all those measures in place and those measures are adhered to, the functions room may not cause an additional problem. I think it still probably will, but I think you need to seriously look at everything that's going to happen in the functions room and make sure that whatever does happen in there does not create a problem. I think the representative for the applicant did say that there has been no review so far for the premises, which is correct. It doesn't necessarily mean there's not a review coming from around the corner. If you grant this application and there is a review in the near future, then there will be a problem because you've already granted this and then you'll be taking it off again. The representative also said that they will be operating with background music, so they have admitted that they're going to play background music on the terrace. So I think that's another reason why you should say there's no amplified or unamplified music to be played live or recorded and no external speakers. Maybe if I could turn to the diary at this point and then we play the video, please.
So, Chair, did you want to go? Oh,
Yes,
Sorry, I just wanted to raise one point about what you said, Michael. And you said if there was a review, there may be a problem because they would be putting it on and then they would be taking it back off again. I think probably what you meant to say was that if there was a review and this had been granted, the review would be able to look at the totality of the premises, this included, as opposed to assuming the committee would be taking something off if a review came forward. There's obviously no guarantee that a review would require. Yeah. Just to make that clear, Chairman.
thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. Under item 4, actually, exclusion of the public and press. Consider excluding the public and press for the following items, if appropriate for me to move. That's under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972. The press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds that if they were present, there could be disclosed exempt information as defined at the paragraph 1 and 2 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act as amended. I therefore move we go into private session. All those in favour? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm we're now live again. Thank you.
Somebody switched it off.
Now, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now if we could see the video, please, that what's showing, Mr. Twiddy. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, Chair. I'll set the video running. I'll have to do the sound through my microphone from the laptop, and hopefully the sound will work as well.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
So
Thank you.
that video was taken at 2:30 in the morning on the 3rd of July. It clearly shows that people are outside with open vessels, drinks vessels, and outside of the seating area, which is allocated on the pavement space. So in breach of the condition that I read earlier on, which my friend across the room didn't read out to you. So the experienced team that I refer to, the 3 company directors, are clearly breaching conditions on the premises license currently. If the application's granted even with conditions, because they are breaching conditions at the moment, there is a chance that those conditions that you impose for the new area could also be breached. That is my presentation. I think Lindsay just wants to say a few words, and as does Darren, about they're not going to go through the whole application. They're just going to tell you that they confirm really that they do currently have problems with noise at the premises, and they do fear that by granting this license, the noise breakout from the functions room will cause them further distress, and certainly people on the terrace will cause a nuisance. And if there are any speakers or any amplified or unamplified live or recorded music on the terrace, that will cause them further problems. So I'll just hand over to Lindsay if you've calmed down.
Sorry, I'm very anxious. Never had to do anything like this before, never had to complain before, but I've lived in my flat, which behind on that video, it's just behind the Turks. And I've experienced the music every weekend since last August. I've never I've never complained because I've never known how to, but I've had, the noise disturbance ever since. Last Friday, as they say, the WIC, that's not even been open for the last 3-4 weeks. Friday night, I've even wrote a list down of the music that they were playing from 1 o'clock because you could hear it plain as day, as if you can sing along to it. It's that loud in my flat. And it's disturbing my sleep, it's disturbing my weekends, it's disturbing my mental health, everything. And I fear that if it's just going to get worse, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you. I think Darren said that I've more or less covered everything that, and Lindsay's just covered everything. So if I could just also, before I finish, just turn to the applicant's bundle, supporting bundle. And in particular, page 11. Which shows a very nice dining area. But I'm led to believe that at night time that isn't a dining area, that's the dance floor area and the DJ booths in there, and that's full of sort of people dancing around. That is confirmed on page 14 of the applicant's bundle, because it's within the area that says, I think it says dance floor in the middle and DJ booth on the bottom there. So I think, you know, the photographs have been dressed up very nicely to make it look like it's a casual dining venue, which it may be in the daytime, but certainly at night time when it's creating noises, those tables and chairs have gone, and it is full of people dancing and live music. So that's my submission. We ask that you seriously consider refusing this application, and I'll probably go through, well, I won't bother going into some, because we're going to go into summing up straight away, aren't we? So I'll just sum up and say now that we feel that the application should be refused in total. But if you do grant it in any way, shape or form, that I think you should probably seriously look at conditioning the functions room very heavily to prevent any noise leakage, and also condition the terrace fairly heavily, so there's no amplified or unamplified music taking place there, no external speakers, and the door supervisors being present, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King, for your presentation. Thank you. Before we're going, he's summed up. Before we've got any questions, Councillor? No? Have you any questions? Okay, thank you. Caroline, if you'd just like to sum up, please, to what, if there's anything you'd like to add.
Obviously, I only heard this morning.
Could you move your microphone over so we can hear you, please? Thank you.
I only heard this morning with regard to the proposal to reduce the hours to 10 p.m. and to prevent any of the regulated entertainment. That was news to me this morning. That is very much welcome. But I would look if it's possible to condition that somehow in the licence.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if you'd like to sum up, please, for the applicant. I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. As the committee are aware, you sit in a licensing quasi-judicial role, and basically you come to a decision based on the evidence put before you. In terms of the guidance to the Licensing Act, paragraph 1.17 is very clear that each application must be considered on its own merits and in accordance with the Licensing Authority's statement of licensing policy. So each case on its own merits. With regard to evidence, the committee will no doubt be aware of the High Court case of Thwaites, where Her Honour Justice Black dealt with evidence, and I just intend to quote just a couple of paragraphs from Her Honour Justice Black in terms of evidence before then looking at the evidence in the case. So in terms of the Thwaites case, it involved an application. It was like a variation and a brand new premise license application back when conversion happened of licensing back in 2005. And what happened was the Seoul Residents Association objected to an application, and the pub got what it wanted. It got its increase in hours, and it's got its new license. That decision was then appealed, and it was appealed by the Residents Association at Sohul. And before the magistrates found in favour of the Residents Association. And at that time, various conditions, etc., were added to that licence. And what Thwaites did, a pub company over in the west of England, was they appealed that, and they went up to the High Court on it. And this is where Her Honour Justice Black specifically looked at the question of evidence and the implication of that on a licensing decision. What she sort of stated at paragraph 63 was, and can I add that she did refuse the residents and found in favour of the pub in her decision, is, however, in my view, their approach to what was necessary was coloured by a failure to take proper account of the changed approach to licensing introduced by the Act, i.e. this lighter touch approach to licensing which came in. Had they had proper regard to the Act and the guidance, they would have approached the matter with a greater reluctance to impose regulation and would have looked for real evidence that it was required in the circumstances of the case. The fact that the police did not oppose the hours sought on the basis should have weighed very heavily with them. They proceeded without proper evidence and gave their own views excessive weight, and their resulting decision limited the hours of operation of the premise without it having been established that it was necessary to do so to promote the licensing objectives. In all the circumstances, their decision was unlawful and it must be quashed. So you have to look at the evidence of the case, and in particular take into account things such as the responsible authorities, etc. So in terms of the evidence, what have we got? We've got the operation of these premises. It's been my client has run these premises now for nearly 20 years. Is a very responsible operator in the Louth market. He knows the clientele. He knows the responsible authorities well, as in particular the police, who's got a great working relationship with. There's also a very experienced manager and DPS. Yeah, we was criticised for not having the whole team here. Well, the premise employs a vast number of people, and this application does have an impact on their livelihoods. But yes, everyone who works there wouldn't come before you. That wouldn't happen in a licensing here, and it would usually be the DPS and the company director. So to be criticised of not having the whole team, and by the team, I thought we'd brought 3 directors. That would be good enough for the committee today. Expenditure on the premises. My clients have spent vast sums of money on the property. It is their livelihood. The last thing they want to do is to be in a position where they are under a review, the business is closed down or restricted, so they can't operate and make it run financially soundly. So in terms of expenditure on the property, they've spent vast sums on it, over £500,000, £300,000 last year. So, and part of that has been spent on the new function room, which you'll see the photographs in the brochure, looks absolutely superb. It's been a very well appointed fitting out, an excellent space and for the people of Louth. It's been stated that it's a function room. The feeling I've got from especially the consultant for the objectors, is that it's going to be used as a full-on licensing bar nightclub upstairs, and that's not the case. That at no point has that ever been placed before the committee. At no point has anyone ever alluded to that. With regard to reviews, the premise has never had a standard review, let alone a summary review. They have never been on the radar. So evidence is that you have a responsible operator. They've never received any notices, underage sales, things of that nature. Their record is clean, and therefore exemplary personal license holders, exemplary DPS, exemplary premise license holder. They're an unblemished record, and therefore I would ask the committee to attach great weight to that when coming to their decision, because we would say that we've got one of the best teams in the whole of Louth that deal with this premise. The request for there's not even been requests for minor variations to add conditions on. If there was issues with noise or the management, door supervisors, etc., why are the police not here? Why have we not been, or in the past, why is the HO, etc., not asked for conditions to be placed on the licence? Please put before the committee, the licensing authority, a minor variation application. If you agree to reduce this or do that, then we won't then bring you to review. And operators, the drop of a hat would go along with a minor variation, would amend the licence and add conditions to it. Nobody has ever asked for that. So again, the evidence is that the premise are run exemplary. There's not an issue. Otherwise, those authorities would have been here and they would have been saying to you, do this, do that today. The function room itself, I already touched upon. The EHO was kind enough to make points in relation to it. Her points, and I made a detailed note, was that in terms of the first floor, that the reduction in hours was very good to 10 o'clock, that the removal of regulated entertainment in the said area, again, was also very good. So in relation to the outside area, she was happy with those measures to reduce the hours to 10 and to not have regulated entertainment out there. We are happy for that to be conditioned in whatever way in relation to the regulated entertainment not taking place outside. Your legal advisor will advise you on the things such as live music, etc., in external areas. All I can say is we will not carry out those activities. Background music will take place, and we are not turning around to the committee and saying don't add conditions to prevent background music. Environmental Health haven't asked for that as a condition. The only person who's asked for that as a condition is Mr. Kang, who is representing the objectors, who we know have a link to other operators in Louth Town Centre. And that's back to that vexatious point, which I've already raised and will touch on further in this closing. So in terms of the inside and the function room, Environmental Health, again, was happy when we said that, it hasn't even raised an issue in relation to that. But she did turn around and say that as long as the windows were closed, that should do the job. So that was it. There wasn't a request for, I've heard things of noise limiters and additional door supervisors, and it's all things that you would associate with a trade objector trying to get conditions that cost money to stop something taking effect. I've seen it over the years. I've been a specialist licensing lawyer for over 20 years, before magistrates, licensing committees, Crown Courts, magistrates courts, and I've seen where this happens before, and I'm seeing it again. Regarding the external area, EHO was kind enough to say that she was happy with at 10 o'clock. It may be that further measures were required, but in a nutshell, and as set out in the representation, if the committee are minded to grant this application, I would submit that 10 o'clock rather than 11 o'clock, and we're happy with that. And in terms of the entertainment, no regulated entertainment out there. That wasn't even put forward until we did today. And not even by the HO in the representation, yet we've willingly offered that, which I think is a big thing to offer. To then turn around by Mr. Kang and say that, oh well, you need to add further conditions, no amplified music whatsoever, etc. And from 7 in the evening, door supervisor. No, it would be our position, and there is no evidence for that whatsoever. No evidence. In terms of the guidance to the Licensing Act, the key enforcer for crime and disorder is the police. That's paragraph 2.1. Licensing authorities should look to the police as the main source of advice of crime and disorder. Paragraph 2.3. Conditions should be targeted on deference and preventing crime and disorder. So that's your door supervisors, your CCTV, etc. The police aren't even here. They're not objecting. So again, for Mr. Kang to want to be saying, well, you need to have door supervisors here and have this condition and have that condition, we would say is not appropriate. There's no evidence to require that. Now, if we do proceed, if the committee are minded and good enough to grant this application today, which I would invite you to do, then if we fail to do what we say, if it goes wrong, then we're back before you on a review. And at that point, you can remove conditions and take away and add conditions. You've got a whole host of options. All we are asking for is that chance, that opportunity to do what we say we're going to do, which is run and continue to run an excellently well-run venue and look to offer further facilities, whether it be a function room or an external area where people can sit down and have a drink outside and enjoy that ambience without being on a roadside, etc. in an area that we would say is secluded. And you know that it will be conditioned because we've already said 10 o'clock and no regulated entertainment. So those measures are there. And if we breach those measures, if we breach them, we are back here before you, and you will have an absolute field day. You'll be able to turn around and say, Hilden said at the last occasion, and you will take whatever measures. But to be curtailing the application before it's even got to where we're inviting you to, I would submit is not correct in this instance. The client are just asking for that chance. In terms of the objections regarding residents and noise, we're aware of 6 objections that have been 6 complaints to the HO, and you've seen the letter received from the HO. We didn't hide it. We put it before you because we want you to have the full information, the full evidence. And that clearly stated that there wasn't any current noise issues, that there was no statutory nuisance. And again, that was confirmed by the HO when they visited Miss Lockie's house, where noise measurements were taken by the HO, and it was not deemed to be a statutory nuisance. No action has been taken. Our premise is on the radar. The DHO are looking at us, and as rightly pointed out by the environmental health, other premises are also. It's not just the Turks Head. They've received complaints from other residents in relation to other properties, and we would submit that those other properties are causing more noise issues than ours. We have 3 residents objecting today, and 2 of them are flats from the business owner who we've got, my client has got a serious ongoing grievances with. So in terms of the residents, you've seen the flyer that went around the whole of the local area. 3 people object. That has gone through every letterbox. If you look at the Mr. King's evidence, where you've got the picture from above, and if you look at my brochure, and I didn't direct you to it, but about pages 30 through to 40 show numerous photographs of the residential area, flat after flat after flat after house after house. They are residential dwellings all in the immediate vicinity of the application site, and yet 3 people have objected, and 2, which I would submit, are on vexatious grounds. One of them's barred from the property. I mean, crikey, if anyone's going to have a grievance, it's going to be that person. And the second asked the DPS, can you write a letter in support for me? And she did the responsible thing, the right thing, and said, no, I'm not that. If you do that off your own back. And then a couple of weeks later, then an objection comes in from that person. How on earth can them objections be taken seriously? How on earth? I would say they are wholly vexatious, and I would ask the committee to find that when coming to a decision. And so that leaves Miss Lockie. And I appreciate she has got issues with noise, but the EHO went to her house and couldn't find a statutory nuisance in relation to the Turks Head, because if so, we would have been served papers. There is no end of legislation out there. The EPA, the Noise Act, which would be brought against the property noise abatement notices, far more restrictive than anything the committee would do. They would bring you before the magistrates, huge fines, etc. None of those measures have been taken, and yet those powers are readily available. Also, the property isn't in an MRO or a CIA. So no early morning restriction orders, no late night levies, no cumulative impact area. Your licensing policy does not have a cumulative impact area. And I without touching the committee to suck on eggs, and I know you'll all be au fait with what a CIA is, but the onus passes on an applicant in a CIA to get a license granted. It's not the same as the application we have before you today. And therefore, where there's a CIA, it's extremely difficult to obtain new licenses, variations, etc., because the burden is on an applicant. That's not the case here. And therefore, Live Centre doesn't have a cumulative impact area. That's massive. If Louth suffered with noise issues, major noise problems, you would have a red circle on a plan saying, this is the East Lindsey District Council, Louth CIA. I'm sure that Skegness will have one somewhere. Am I wrong on that? No. If there's issues with noise, that's what and disorder, etc. That is what you get, CIAs, and yet this Louth doesn't have one. So again, I'd ask the committee to attach great weight to that when coming to the decision. I've already touched on the reviews, no review applications against the property. So where does that leave us? In the bundle of documents produced, you can see the photographs and the high specification of the property. Property has been in situ now for many years and under this ownership for circa nearly the last 10 years now. And in that time, no reviews, etc. No action against them. What they have done over that time period is vary the license, had extensions, got longer hours, etc. Again, one would expect there to be the police, etc., if there was issues of crime, disorder, public safety, and they're not there. So all we're down to is the rep from the HO, which I hope I've addressed, and I would also go on to say my client has liaised with the HO outside of the room today, and again has stressed the need that they want to work with them. We've invited the HO to the property. And we want to carry out noise readings, etc., and to be part of that in the future going forwards. My client have got a business here, but they know they are in an area where they have to work with the responsible authorities, also with the local residents, and they are happy to do so, and they will strive to do so. And like I say, contact has already been made with the HO in doing so. So. The function room, environmental health, key responsible authority haven't objected to that area, and has said that windows should be enough for that, and we agree. There should be no other restrictions, no curtailments on hours, etc. for that area. There's no evidence for that. In terms of the external area, I appreciate that's different, and in terms of that area. We are happy for the restriction and the reduced hour to 10 o'clock, and we are happy for no regulated entertainment. And I think that is more than ample in this instance, and we'd ask the committee to grant on that basis, because that would give my client the opportunity to prove that they can do it properly. And if they don't do it, we're back before you, and we know that. But today they are just asking for that chance. That's the application, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions or anything? I would just like to say something which I found not very pleasing, was your comment earlier on. You alluded to this case down south. Well, I can assure you, I've been on this licence committee for 23 years. And I can assure you that this committee knows exactly how to deal with licensing without you inferring that we don't. And I found that very disconcerting. So I'll accept your apology, because I know I'm not going to get one, but we will now retire and make our decision.
No, I'm sorry, Chair.
Sorry.
I do apologise if I have said anything about the committee and anything to dismiss. At no point has anything been said that is trying to say that this is an area and you don't know what you're doing. I fully respect the committee. I respect the legal officer. I can't even recall what. And so.
We are now retiring. You are to please.
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm we're now live streaming.
Thank you for that, Elaine. Thank you. Yes, thank you for your patience, everyone. I will ask our legal officer, Kim, to read out our jurisdiction now, please, if you would, our recommendations. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Chairman. The subcommittee have read and heard all of the information before them. They've heard from Mr. Hilden representing the applicant, Caroline Curry from Environmental Health, and Mr. Keng representing the objectors to the application. The subcommittee heard from the applicant that they wish to reduce the terminal hour for the roof terrace to 2,200 hours every day and would not have regulated entertainment on the terrace, and that was in response to the objections received. The subcommittee also noted measures that the applicant had advised they had taken to measure noise from the premises. Mr. Keng addressed the subcommittee providing information about current noise issues with the premises that the objectors had experienced. He provided a video to show people outside of the premises and noise coming from the premises. Mr. Keng stated that there would inevitably be a disco up there, referring to the first floor area. The subcommittee heard from Caroline Curry, the Environmental Health Officer, who welcomed the reduction of hours and removal of regulated entertainment from the roof terrace. The subcommittee, having considered all of the information, have decided to grant the licence as applied for in respect of the first floor area. In respect of the roof terrace, the subcommittee have decided to reduce the terminal hour to 2,200 hours every day and remove regulated entertainment from that area. Having considered the representations, the subcommittee feel it is appropriate for the promotion of the prevention of public nuisance objective that background music only should be played, and the subcommittee require that windows on the first floor remain closed. They have noted the request for door supervisors on the first floor and the roof terrace. However, they have not received evidence sufficient to warrant additional door supervisors, noting the premises already had a requirement for door supervisors on their licence. The subcommittee, noting the application is a variation to a current licence, have decided that no further conditions are appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The application is granted as advised previously, and there is a right of appeal for everybody to the Magistrates Court within 21 days of being notified of this decision. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Kim. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance this afternoon. I wish you all very well. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.